There's one in every crowd. Okay. The rich young ruler, Jesus said to him, go sell all you have and give to the poor and come follow me. And the rich young ruler couldn't do it. And I was Dutch, and I was faced with Luke 14:33, and I couldn't do it. And the Lord had to show me through this pineapple garden of all things how he teaches us lessons. The verse goes like this: so likewise, whosoever he be of you that forsaketh not all that he has, he cannot be my disciple. It doesn't say he cannot be saved. Many people are saved and they're hanging on tight as if we were Dutch, just hanging on to our belongings and possessions and fighting and struggling and fussing. But we can't be his disciple that way. Discipleship means lordship. He must be Lord of all. And I don't know if you're here tonight and he's your Savior, but what about all these things? We had that garden out there. It wouldn't grow, sandy soil, poor soil, and we almost gave up on it, but after 3 years, the pineapples grew. We were delighted in that tropical place to get some fresh fruit. But alas, the natives stole them all. I was so angry. Have you ever met an angry missionary? You don't meet them on this side. I called those people together and said, hey, no more clinic. No more clinic if you keep stealing them. Are you going to eat all the pills yourself? They said. And I said, no. They always looking through our windows watching us take the vitamins. And I said, no, but you're not going to get pills and pineapples both. I mean, I can control one. I can't control the other. And they didn't think that I would do it, but I've closed the clinic. They didn't know they were dealing with a Dutch person. And they sat on my front porch. Tuan, give us some pills for my headache. I said, go sit on your own front porch. You're eating my pineapples. Oh, not me, Tuan. It's always the other guy. They're just like us. But you know, they went on that whole week, and towards the end of the week, they let their babies die of malaria fevers and other fevers. They buried them and blamed us. We didn't know this, but when we heard of it, oh, no. You mean they'll let their babies die and keep stealing? Chronic thieves they were. Well, we couldn't bear that, so we opened a clinic again. I thought, I've got to think of something else to get my pineapples. And after a couple of weeks, and we hadn't tasted one yet, and we wondered what they taste like. And after a couple of weeks, I thought of it. My store, I sold fish hooks and matches and salt. They needed salt badly. And everything else that I brought in from the coast, they didn't have any other place to buy. And I said to them one Monday morning, no more store after this if you don't leave those pineapples alone. And they wondered, they looked at me. Next Monday, no store. And they were mad. And you know what they did? They rolled up their grass mats and went to their favorite hunting grounds and fishing grounds, and they said, if that stingy white man won't share his things, well, then there's no advantage living near him. And so they took off, left me with a vacation. Now, that was a tremendous thing when they bug you from morning till night, year after year. You can't get away, but when the airplane comes, and, oh, just to be, you know, to have them leave you alone for a while. And we delighted in the fact that we had this vacation there at our own home. 4 villages moved away. They all took off and left us. It was absolutely fabulous. I could sleep in the morning. And we got our correspondence done. The mission was happy, and everything was done. And got all my wife's things fixed. She nagged me about fixing stuff, and I never had time. But no, she didn't nag me. She strongly encouraged me to do it, though. But I got her happy, and she's so much nicer to live with. And 6 weeks, after 6 weeks, it got boring. I mean, you can't learn language if there's no people to learn it from. It's unwritten. Yeah. I mean, you can eat pineapples back here at home if that's all you're going to do. And the plane came, and Bob says, where's all your coolies? I said, they've gone to the jungle. I didn't tell him why. And he was kind of sore at me. He says, this grass needs cut. I can't land you know better than this. Why don't you get your people? He says, where's your people anyway? You know? And I used to hire 100 of them to cut the airstrip with their machetes. Pay them all a handful of salt, and they loved it. They'd gladly work a day for a handful of salt. And And he says, I can't come back. I'm going to call on the radio if you don't get this cut. And then he takes off. No, last thing he said was, why don't you send somebody to call him back? And he took off. Well, my wife wouldn't go. I mean, you can't really blame her. I mean, those jungles are full of, I've described that to you, thorns and briars and snakes and what have you. There's nobody else to send. We didn't know where they were anyway. My lifeline's cut off now. Hey, God, I need my people. After 6 weeks, you love them again. You know, you send your loved one away for 6 weeks, and you love them again when they come back. And I prayed, Lord, give me my people back. And there stood a man one day with a big smile on his face. And I thought, buddy, get that big smile off your face. There's nothing funny. And he says, Doing, how are you doing? I said, call them all back. You be my messenger. When they all get here, I'll open my store. And he smiles again and goes. And they come back all right. And when they get there, they yell and shout and say, Tuan, open your store. Here they are pushing me around again, telling me what to do. I thought they'd probably steal my pineapples again, too. And they didn't. But it's even worse. I had tasted them. I had tasted a good way of life. And now you have to, it's like us now with the inflation, you know. You've had it better and now you don't get it. And you start to complain. Hey, don't fall into that trap. But, oh, they stole them all and I was fussing with them every day. My window of my office faced that garden, unfortunately, but every time I looked up, I see the thieves. Really gets you. And I'd shout at them, what are you doing in my garden? They'd say, just looking, Tuan, just looking. Well, I said, do your looking somewhere else. They'd found out where the ripe ones was. By nighttime, they'd come in the dark, know right where to go. Thought of building a fence, but they could climb like monkeys. No way, keep them out of the garden. Somebody at home here said you should have built an electric fence. Wouldn't that give them a charge? They weren't thinking, no power out there. I thought of, finally, an idea. A missionary in the Highlands was raising German Shepherd dogs, and I said, Jim, send me the biggest male dog you can ever raise. One day the plane, the pilot called, I've got your dog on board. I thought, oh, this is going to be a great day. Now the people used to always crowd around the airplane when it came. They would all flock out of the village in one big mass of humanity around the airplane to see what was in there, see what was coming for them, see what they could steal and so forth. The pilot would always complain. I said, Otto, you've got to keep the people away from the airplane. I couldn't build a fence out there. I thought, what does he expect me to do? Well, he used to carry fresh vegetables out of the mountains many times to the south coast. The air in the plane always smelled good of fresh vegetables. All the flies that the people carried around them, the horse flies and all, would get into that airplane. He'd fight them all the way back to their home. And he says, I can't stand these flies. I thought, well, man, you've got to learn to live with it. I've got to learn to live with it. I mean, you got to get some victory. I didn't say that to him. There was another reason. Yeah, these pilots took great pride in having their planes nice and clean. Our people never use handkerchiefs. They always got runny noses. And they'd stand with their noses up against the window, see what was in that plane. And that poor pilot, he'd get so angry, you know, and so all fussed up. It was me. But this morning, I didn't care how many were around the plane or how close they got. I thought the more the better. This is going to be a great day. And when he opened that small door, that back door of that plane, out jumps this dog. They'd never seen anything like this. He was like a tiger to them. They only had these mangy little dogs. And you should have seen it. Oh, you should have been there. You should have seen those people run. Every direction, up the coconut trees. They went up on my roof. You know, they just tore off, left us in a cloud of dust, you know. And, that dog let out one bark. It was fantastic. Doesn't it feel good to just get back at them a little bit, you know? They've stolen all your pineapples all through the months, and just to see them run once, oh, that just delighted my soul. You know, I had to unload the plane again myself, but it was worth it. It really was. And that dog did the job. Oh, there was no more pineapples stolen. I remember clearly the days when they would stand way off there and holler, tie up your dog. We need medicine from the clinic. And so the only thing I could tie him up with was this vine, no chain out there or anything. And so I tied him with the vine, and my wife, nurse there, was giving out the medicine. And, oh, that dog would chew that vine. He got smart. He must have had teeth like no other dog had, because smart, too. He chewed the same spot. He knew 20 minutes, half an hour, he'd be free. He did it every day. And he would stand with his back towards the clinic and growl and chew and growl and chew. And the people, oh, my wife says, Otto, you've got to get rid of the dog. You know, they're all pushing her and saying, me first, quick, Noni, quick. They wouldn't even be still for our first shot. You know, the dog is going to get loose any time now. And oh, my wife had almost a nervous breakdown. And she says, Otto, get rid of the dog. It's ruining the whole thing. Well, I felt the same thing. I used to sit on my step and preach to the people and learn the language. But now that dog, I mean, there was no more loitering done around our house. And so I had to find the people in the villages and in the jungle, wherever they were. I came to them in the village one day, and there wasn't a soul there, absolutely still. And I thought, what happened to all these people? And then I looked behind me, and guess who had followed me? And they had seen the white man and his dog coming. And, oh, brother, wasted trip. I tried to get him to bring a vine so I could tie him up, but no way. And so I walked back home with that dog, and I told Prince that I appreciated him for the pineapples, that he was doing a good job on them, but I said, you're ruining my ministry. I've got to get rid of you. And I got rid of him. And the people cheered. That's the best thing you've done since you came here. Got rid of that dog. And he stole all the pineapples again. And I laid awake over that garden, and I was angry, and every day they stole. You know, if they had only stolen all the pineapples one day a week, say on Saturday, I could have got prayed up and got right with the Lord and won a few souls the rest of the day. But you know, it was spaced. Satan so controlled that crowd that he had them steal a few each day, constantly kept me spiritually off balance, constantly kept me spiritually stirred up so that I couldn't win them, because an angry missionary doesn't win people to Christ. Have you ever won somebody to Christ that you were always angry at and always fussing with? That's not the way to do it. It's the very opposite. And you say, well, you knew it wasn't right for you to be angry. Sure I did. I'd confess it. I'd say, Lord, I shouldn't be angry at these people all the time. Forgive me. And he'd forgive me. But then after a couple of days, you know, it'd get me again, you know. They're stealing. I hadn't gotten one yet. One day a guy came up and said to him, he came to my store, he says, do you want to buy this pineapple to him? Us Dutchmen, we don't buy stuff that they steal from. I gave him an extra sermon on stealing. I was doing a lot of messages on stealing. I was doing very little preaching on loving your enemies. We've got to watch the motives in our preaching. But I didn't know what else to do. I tried everything in my power. I drove a stake in that garden one day, and they said, what are you doing, Tuan? And I'm saying, this is a marker. And I said, I want all the people to come. So they called all the people. What's he doing? I said, now look, this marker, that's all that side of the garden is going to be for you. Any pineapple grows there, you can have. That side is mine. You leave them alone. And they said, Tuan, your nose doesn't look as long now. That was the word for stingy, long-nosed. That's what they call me, long-nosed Tuan. And they said, now, this was the first time they called me generous, and it was really thrilling to hear that. You're not so long-nosed anymore. Your nose doesn't even look as long. And they said, you know, that's hard to do for a Dutch person to give 50% of his possessions away. That is about the limit, isn't it? I mean, we never do that kind of thing. But they stole both halves anyway. But I only had half a garden to worry about. Can you imagine cutting your worries in half? Hey, now, don't you envy the rich guy? He's got more worries than you'll ever have. Do you really cut your worries in half when you give half your stuff away? No, you don't. It's a waste. you can worry as much about half a garden as you can about the whole thing. Some of us are so foolish, we worry about things we don't even have yet. How are we going to get them? And, well, there was half a garden. As a matter of fact, I'd catch a guy in my half of the garden, and I'd start to yell at him. He'd jump over the line and stand and laugh at me. Oh, the harder I tried, the worse it got. I thought, what am I going to... I start to pray about this garden now. Isn't it about time? When do you start praying about your problems? When you've exhausted every possible way that you can put it together, right? That's how, as men, usually, we try to do everything, and then we say, hey, no way. And then we say, God, I need you. Well, I started to pray, but God wasn't ready to answer me yet. And so I struggled on, tried everything, threatened, and so on, and I wondered what to do. And finally they told me the guys that are stealing them all are the guys that planted them. And I asked them, and they said, our hands planted them, our mouth eats them, they're ours. You didn't plant them, they're not yours. I said, that's my garden. Those were my plants. I paid you to plant them. Well, 200, but you never got your hands dirty. And when you plant something, they're not yours. They really believed it was their pineapples. It was one of them guys tried to sell me the pineapples. They were selling them to everybody else, to strangers. They were really having a good deal off this thing. And here I was paying to weed the garden. No matter how I spoke, they said they owned it. I told my wife she lost her sanctification too that day, or whatever she had, she lost it. Because she said, they built my house too. They'll probably claim it one of these days. You know how women are always concerned with their house. And I said, yeah, they probably will. Oh, man, what could you do? I lost sleep over this thing. What am I going to do now? They say they own the garden. It's the only small piece of ground near here. The rest is swamp. I want to own a garden. Don't you want to own some gardens? We all enjoy owning something. Any of you own anything? Don't you enjoy owning something? And well, I said to him one day, okay, transplant them. You all come back tomorrow, take these plants, plant them in your own garden. And he said, will you pay us? I said, no, I won't pay you. Well, then you're asking us to do work. Finally, I end up paying them. Can you imagine a Dutchman paying people to take the pineapples out of his own garden? I did it. I mean, I wanted to, and I started all over again. Well, I hired these guys to throw them on the trash heap. I said, now you take them from there, and most of them rotted. I was hoping they'd plant them so they wouldn't have to steal my next crop. So they'd have some, but most of them rotted. Can you imagine? They needed them, I needed them, everybody needed them. Here we pull them up and they're rotting. I started all over again. Now I had to educate them to plant pineapples without owning them. I had to start a course, how to plant pineapples and not own them. And I don't think they ever got it, but I finally ended up paying them 10 times what they deserved, these beautiful big long machetes that I got from England. And I showed it to them, and they said, oh, they're beautiful, Tuan. I said, now look, your hand's going to plant the pineapples. Yeah. My mouth's going to eat them. Oh, that's impossible. But look, your hand is going to handle this beautiful machete. Oh, that they have to think. They just thought, you know, well, what am I going to... And so, finally, they got them all done. I gave them the machetes. And we had 3 years of peace. Oh, no, they stole everything else. I'll tell you about that later. But 3 years, they couldn't steal pineapples. And I asked those fellows, you still have the machete? They said, yes, Tuan. I said, don't lose it. The crocodile gets into your canoe and turns it over, you know, and they'll try to grab a baby or someone can't swim, and the parents have told me they take them under the bank of the river and actually never see them again. And I said, now, when a crocodile turns over your canoe, I should have said, grab the baby. I said, grab the machete, don't let it sink. Because if they lost the machete, what would I lose? The garden. Oh, it was one of them bad situations. Any one of those guys lost their machete, I'd lose my garden. Man, it was bad. I thought this isn't going to work yet. I said, why don't you guys get locks on your doors so nobody steals it? You know, put doors on first, you know, somehow. I mean, they didn't have doors. They were 1 year old, and I went on furlough. I didn't ever want to go back again. And I said, Lord, I'll go anywhere in the world but to the Aleut tribe. I mean, I'm fed up with them. They can have all the pineapples that grow on. It doesn't matter to me anymore. Don't ever say, Lord, I'll go anywhere but that place. Because, you know, God says, hey, if you're going to be totally obedient anywhere, you know. So don't you say it. I've described this country to you. Don't you say, God, don't send me to Jaya. I got to the Bill Gothard Seminar in Chicago in McCormick Place, huge place, 12,000 of us there. And Bill Gothard says, give your possessions to God. God takes good care of his property. What do you think I thought of? That crazy garden half a world away. And then he went on to say, whatever you give to God with the right motives, you'll never lack in that thing. If you give to God with the right motives, and in this day when money is dropping in value, and maybe one of these days, months, years, it won't be worth anything, while we have the choice, let's give to God. Because there's a day coming when you won't be able to give. And if you give to him now, then he promises he will take care of you in that item. And I've never lacked for pineapples, and I don't lack for pineapples today. I mean, whatever you give to God, at the right motive, you will always have. And it worked that way in every area of the things we gave. And I invite you to do it. Say, God, it's yours. Give to God with the right motives. And after that, he had us bow our heads and said, what is God speaking to you on? And I knew what it was. I didn't hear the rest of the seminar. I had to repeat it again because all I could think of was say, why didn't I think of that? Gave half the garden to the people once, but should have given the whole garden to God. And I prayed and I said, Lord, it's yours. I'm finished. I'm worn out fighting. You can't use me out there. I'm fighting with the people. I don't want to be the angry missionary anymore. It's your garden. You handle them. I grinned when I said, Lord, you handle them. I thought, wonder if God can handle those boys out there. You know, I mean, I knew I couldn't. I stood out there a year later in the garden. They were now 2 years old. And I said one night, as the people had gone home, I said, Lord, I really meant it. It's your pineapples. And they're starting to grow now, see? I said, Lord, they're your pineapples. I really meant it. If you want to give them to the people here, to the tribesmen, go ahead. That's up to you. If you want them given to your faithful missionary, I'd really appreciate it. You know what I mean? Now, somebody challenged me on that and said, are you sure it wasn't a very faithful missionary? You're always fighting. Sure. I just wondered how that old lady would have, you know, stood up under the same situation. I mean, but you don't say that to them, so you say, yeah, I wasn't a very good missionary. But I said, Lord, well, wouldn't you rather give your pineapples to your own child than to a bunch of crooks, headhunters, thieves, you know? Sure you would. I mean, even if your child isn't a very good child, I mean, he's still your child. And I thought certainly he's going to give me his pineapples. And I was weeding his garden for him. I paid the people to weed it out of my own pocket. And I said, Lord, never mind that. You can pay me back in pineapples. Isn't that neat to have God indebted to you? Has any of you ever experienced that? You've got God indebted to you and he owes you some stuff? That's neat. Is God ever indebted to us? Oh, friends, if it wasn't for the grace of God, nobody could walk out of that door tonight. Isn't that right? If it wasn't for the grace of God, we couldn't eat our next meal, right? If it wasn't for the grace of God, we couldn't even breathe our next breath. We are totally dependent upon God. He is never indebted to us. We are totally, absolutely indebted to him. Do you know that? Hey, let's live according to that. Let's remember that. We need God desperately, and he doesn't need us. But I was thinking that he would give me some of those pineapples. Oh, friends, God's got a sense of humor. You should have seen how he grew them. They were extra tall. They were fatter. This is nothing. I mean, this is bad looking compared to one's got. Where's that fella that gave it to me? No, I mean, they were big. They were beautiful, the ones that God grew. And he must have sat up in heaven, just laughed, said to his angels, watch me grow these things, that dumb missionary down there. Oh, my. You know, I had a couple of little girls who were anemic and really pale, and I said, Lord, have you seen my little girls? They need vitamin C so bad, and you've got all kinds of it coming up, and I just want you to be aware of my need. You know? You tell God your needs, twisting God's arm, pressuring him a little bit. Have you ever said something like that, Lord, if you'll do this for me, I'll serve you the rest of my life and all that kind of... God doesn't go for that. You can't pressure God to answer your prayers. God won't even pay any attention to you. He says, I'll let your little girl suffer if you, Dad, don't get with it. And he'll let our children suffer and our wives suffer and everybody else suffers in order that he would teach us spiritual lessons. God is more interested that we grow in Christ than that we are wealthy or healthy or whatever. Have you experienced that? Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? It must hurt God as he sits up in heaven and says, man, I'd like to bless that guy. Oh, I'd like to bless that guy. But I can't. And he's holding himself back from throwing the blessings down on us because we aren't getting with it. I believe God would send us a revival anytime we're ready to receive it and say, God, we'll get in step with you. But it would have to be all of us. If only half of us get in step with him, God says, well, I don't get excited about this yet. Right? Well, God grew his pineapples and they were almost ready. The natives were in the garden looking at God's pineapples. I prayed and I warned God and I said, Lord, they're looking at your pineapples. And then I proceeded to tell them, people say, well, why didn't you pick them the first time? Well, because they always picked them green. They never left them to get ripe. If they didn't pick stuff green, somebody else would get it. They were always eating their own food green. Nothing ever got ripe there because then the other guy would steal it. That's why I couldn't get any. And so I said to the Lord, I said, Lord, they always pick them green before they're ripe. They're about ready for them to steal now. So I just wanted to warn you. So you'd be looking this way. I mean, I had experience, right? I'd gone through this thing, and I was sharing my experience with the Lord. Does God need our help? What do you think? God needs your help? Did you ever help God out? Say, God, I'm going to help you out. God says, get out of my way. See, God doesn't share his glory with a man. Right? That's in Scripture. God doesn't share his glory with anyone. If Otto Konig and God Almighty had pulled it off, then the two of us would have got the glory, right? God doesn't go for that at all. God says, get out of my way, buddy. The sooner you get out of my way, the sooner I can show you how it's done. But I wasn't ready to get out of the way yet. I was helping God. I told him one day, I said, Lord, I'm on your side. I'm on your side. I'm your missionary. I'm not against God. And so I warned him. I said, Lord, they're looking at him. And God wasn't even looking. I guess he wasn't because the natives stole them all. Oh, I was so angry. They stole all God's beautiful big ones. And I didn't get a one. Now, do you think that was fair? Man, that made me bad. I looked up the sky one day. I said, God, I can't believe it. I don't even want to believe it. You mean you can't handle these boys neither? Well, he can handle them. He'd have to almost change them completely because they were chronic thieves. They taught their children to steal. I had a woman one time standing in front of my house. She had a little girl about, 4 years old, 5 years old. And she was teaching this child to steal. And they were always practicing on my pineapples. You know, if you stole enough, you could get to be chief. You know, so it was great. And she says, now check all the windows, see if the two on isn't seen. Okay, if you don't see them, you go to the garden, get that one there, bring it back here to Mommy. And kid pulled it off beautifully. I was hidden. She didn't see me. And she went to the garden, broke off the pineapple, brought it back real proud. And then I come out and spoiled the whole story. You know, spoiled the whole thing. And I said, lady, I saw that. And she started to beat that child. You got caught. See, you're wrong. You got caught. And, I mean, the kids are totally delusioned in how they grow up, and they all grow up to be thieves. And they stole them all. I was mad every day. No, they were stealing God's pineapples, and I was mad in God's behalf, right? I was angry for his sake. It's almost like righteous indignation. You're doing it for God, right? And so they call me the angry missionary, but an angry person is a miserable person. Have you experienced that? If you're angry, you're miserable. Do you know that? And one day praying, I said, Lord, I'm so miserable. And the Lord seemed to put in my mind, well, why are you angry? Well, I said, Lord, somebody's got to be angry. I mean, they're stealing pineapples out there. They're stealing your pineapples. I wish you'd get angry. Then I wouldn't need to be angry. The Lord seemed to deal with me. And he got me to the place where I said, Lord, I don't care if you get angry or not. I'm